Let me ask you though, Belle, because there aren't a lot of, well, one, there's not a lot of characters really, but Belle is the third of the women that actually speak. So would you typecast her the same way?
Who, Belle?
Belle.
Well, that is different because they actually, Belle and Fanny they have direct interaction with them, but they also know the good Scrooge too. I mean, they know him, and that's the other thing. How responsible is Scrooge? I mean, for what he became. Isn't it kind of weird that isn't there sort of arguably a psychological thing where he's the lonely boy and his father abandoned him? I mean, it's weird because the first thing you see is not how bad Scrooge is or how he degenerated, but maybe even as bad as Scrooge is, it's not all Scrooge's fault.
But I think the whole thing about the Fezziwig and Belle is to counteract that, maybe. It's like, but he did have these good influences.
He wasn't that way, even though that happened while he was in school. Then when he was in his apprenticeship, that he wasn't living that kind of life.
Yeah.
So it's something that he learned after his apprenticeship, which would be then greed and the love of money.
He did, but he also, but isn't that partly because of his? In the other one of the other things you get, what's the actual argument that Scrooge and Belle have?
That he loves money more than he loves her.
But what else? What's his view? I mean, because I mean, he's not going to answer. He's not going to say, "Well, money's better than me." Of course, you're second, but you're second only to money.
His argument was we're never wanting to be sufficiently established.
Yeah.
Economically, in order to be able to make the commitment.
Control.
Right.
Because if he didn't have control when he was younger, he abandoned the love. He needs the money in order to feel secure, and when he feels secure, that's when he feels safe to go out.
But he never feels.
But he
never gets to the point where he feels he's secure.
And that's a Lewis thing too. That it's not people.
I don't remember where it's from, but yes.
Might be mere Christianity, but he says people don't do what they do for money because of greed. They do it because of security.
Maslow's hierarchy or something. The psychology thing, you have to take care of all of your basic needs, and then once you take care of your basic needs, you can start moving up until you get to the highest level.
Right.
Okay. Scrooge liked being cut off from everybody else, where he was at the beginning of the story. And in his life, he was cut off by his dad, and then by his fiancée, if she was his fiancée, whatever. But anyhow, he was cut off by her, so his actions were just living out what had already happened to him.
Is that because he liked it, or because that's what he was used to?
Defense mechanism.
Well, and that's where I was going to go. It's actually a reaction to fear, and that's the fear of being hurt. And so you don't want to be hurt. So the way you keep yourself from being hurt is you build the wall around yourself, and you distance yourself. You isolate yourself from people. You douse all your emotions to the extent you can, and that is what Scrooge is at the beginning.
Well, but is he afraid of being hurt by Belle?
He didn't want to go. That scene with her, he didn't. That was horrible for him to see that last scene of his past.
Right.
It could have been as horrible as seems great. I mean, and he was really hurt. I mean.
And that's what sealed his fate as to who he became.
Yeah.
I mean, he was already headed that way. But that was kind of like, okay, now I need to finally put that last wall up and not care about people, because if I don't care about people, then they can't hurt me.
Is that what he's afraid of, though? Is he afraid of people hurting him?
Yeah.
I think so.
He's miserable. Okay. The way he was treated by his father and his Belle, the the way she treated him, he's never gotten over that. And so he is miserable.
Although arguably, the thing with the father is not, we don't know whether it's his fault or not. I mean, we can assume it's not his fault. But the thing with Bell, you could argue it's his fault that it ended up the way it did. But he's still miserable because of it. It still told him that it happened the way it did.
Yeah, they still act like the victim.
Yeah,
Even if
exactly
it's his
right.
fault.
There's another scene, another not state, but another section where Spirit and Scrooge travel and see Belle remarried. Or not remarried, but married to someone else.
And that's,
he gets to see that she moved on with her life with somebody else.
that's the very last scene of the Ghost of Christmas Past. Right, and it's actually, I think, around the eve of the death of Marty, if I remember. It's the way that it's phrased, because that's the memory is at the time that Marty was dying, if I remember how I read it. And it was him going and seeing what had happened to Belle, and so then Belle's got her family and a loving husband. And,
the husband saw Scrooge in the street, I think.
Right.
Through the store light or whatever, the window light of the shop.
Yeah, I don't see Scrooge being afraid of being hurt by people. I see he doesn't want Belle to leave, but he's not willing to give up his sort of strategy of avoiding adversity. I mean, he's afraid of being poor or not having enough. He doesn't want her to leave, but he doesn't want her to stay enough to change his life, to go back to how he was when he was with Fezziwig.
Yeah, he's very contemptuous of people.
And it could be.
He can change his life.
Well, I think the point of that scene is that that's the moment of choice. This is his moment. It's Belle or his strategy for security. That's who knows what he thinks, but he. But that is his moment. That is his moment of choice. That's where he goes down. He can go down one road or the other, and he takes the other.
That's the final straw. He hates people, but people are the means to how he can attain what he wants. But he despises people, probably because he needs them in order to be able to become rich.
Wow.
I don't know that he despises people.
I think he really wants to be a part of his nephew's dinner and all that. That would make him vulnerable.
I don't think he did initially, though. At the beginning of the story, I don't think he did. I think it took him being reformed.
Because you can want something and still deny it just because it's so foreign to the way you usually have.
He did let Cratchit have Christmas Day off.
It's a poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every
But he said, but I suppose you must have the whole day. He did cave on that and go, okay.
By the way,
Otherwise,
my boss says that every year.
I mean, that is a hint that he's not completely gone, and that his soul, he's like just a tiny fragment of the soul, of a human soul, happy person in there, and that he goes, I suppose you must have the whole day. I mean, because you could have said, no, you're coming in, you're working tomorrow.
That's right. I heard something about this recently that said Christmas wasn't celebrated, and both the industrialists didn't want to give the day off, and the workers didn't want the day off because they didn't want to give up the pay, and because they weren't always paid. So Scrooge might actually be slightly.
It's a slight hint
better
because he's like picking my pocket because he is going to pay Cratchit for a day that he's not going to work. That always was a surprise to me that he's not completely evil.
Yeah.
But then he did say, I suppose I have to do it because if not, you'd consider yourself ill-treated.
Yeah.
What about and since I'm the only one around here who feels that way, then I suppose I should give you the day off.
Did anybody notice anything about when Bob Cratchit's name comes up for the first time?
fire, yeah, they're talking about fire and chill.
No, it does, he's only called the clerk at the beginning.
Really?
He's not called Bob Cratchit. He's not called Bob Cratchit until he's visited. But the whole, like the first half of it, he has no name. He's just a clerk. So, does that mean anything, or is that just is that a blooper?
That sounds,
No, that's a depersonalization.
yeah.
Is it, Scrooge never mentions the
The narrator never mentions
narrator.
it. The narrator calls him the clerk until, I think it's more than halfway into the story. I think it's till Christmas Present, because then they actually go to when they go, they give his name. But he's mentioned several times. No, Scrooge and the narrator.
Okay.
Even the Scrooge are my clerk, you know. But the narrator says, you know, the poor clerk is shivering or something. But yeah, until they go to his house, and he's in it a lot because there's the conversation between Scrooge and the clerk, and then Fred and Scrooge, and he yells something out. So it's not just one thing. He's mentioned several times, but only as the clerk. Does that mean anything, or is that a blooper?
You would have gone back and changed it if it happened. I think that's something you would know. That's something that would come out.
Dickens wasn't real big on rewriting, though.
Yeah, and it's
That's
not.
why, not real big on rewriting. All of his stuff was done as a serial.
And plus, he wrote this in a couple of weeks.
I could see it as being just a subconscious thing. It was the clerk, and then he developed more personality. As Scrooge improved his.
From Scrooge's perspective, or from the author and narrator's perspective?
From Scrooge's perspective.
So it was when he first showed up, right, he's transported by the ghost to the Cratchit household. Is that the first time that they say Bob Cratchit's house?
Yeah.
And he's mentioned as the clerk several times, at least 4, maybe 5 times. Up until then.
Scrooge never says his name
Never.
in the whole.
Neither does the narrator.
So
And
he
neither does
sees
the
him
narrator.
as an employee.
Well,
A machine.
Yeah, that makes
before,
sense.
And then all of a sudden he's got a family.
he's just he's a cog in the wheel.
Yeah.
He's that little person.
Nothing
Oh.
personal, yeah.
Yeah, that's
That
true.
makes a lot of sense.
I mean, I think that fits in thematically, but maybe in the actual writing of it, maybe he just developed the clerk character more. I mean, it could go either way.
And Cratchit's not really pivotal to the story up until they visit the house.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe
So
he
that could
hadn't
be a
decided.
literary device at that point, that he's not important right now, so it doesn't matter that we know his
Yeah.
name or not. But once they visit a house, oh, now we have to know who he is.
Yeah,
And this is his family.
Right, maybe as he's writing, he didn't decide that they'd visit the Cratchits until he got to that part or
Right.
something like that. Yeah, I don't know. Any votes on that? Does it have this meaning that Cratchit takes on significance when Scrooge starts to thaw, or it's the writer who hasn't outlined his whole story and hasn't decided?
It's a form.
It's a form.
And it's.
Anybody think it's the realities of writing?
No.
I could go
Well,
with
they
that.
didn't
I
have
actually
cut
think
and
it can be.
paste, so.
I mean, I hope it's the first, but I can definitely see it being
Well,
the latter.
Even if it is.
Unless you read Augustine, he's
accidental.
always repeating himself. It's like, I'm not going to go read all that stuff, and so I'll change it. And
There's no cut and paste. So-
Even if it is
no
accidental.
searching on that.
Right. Even if it is accidental, it's the sign of a good writer's mind that it works. And,
Yeah.
and it does show character
Right,
development.
you integrate what you've done, even when you develop it more.
Yeah.
What about commerce? What's